Hi guys, it's Adriana with Jack's Mom in Austin, and this is Emily from Tandem Speech Therapy, correct? And I'm going to let her introduce herself. I told her I would because I don't want to butcher it. So, Emily, go ahead.
Thanks for having me this morning. My name is Emily Cohen, and I'm a pediatric speech-language pathologist, and I have a private practice here in Austin called Tandem Speech Therapy, and I do a few different things in my capacity as a speech-language pathologist. So I work with families who have young children who are delayed with their language acquisition skills. And then I do a lot of work around play and how to increase language stimulation when you're playing with your kids. And I call that playing with purpose, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And so I also come into families' homes and work with them specifically in regards to that. Maybe they don't have concerns about their child's language, but they're just looking for some more tips and learning opportunities to increase language with their kids. And so I do, like I said, the individual therapy and the playing with purpose coaching. And then I also offer, if parents ever have just a few questions and they're unsure about things, I do free consultations on the phone so people can schedule that with me as well.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I was telling her, you know, a lot of times parents are intimidated about calling and getting any information because we assume that it's going to be hundreds of dollars just to get help for, you know, one question we might have about our child. So I think that's definitely something awesome that you do. So we're going to go ahead and start with talking about Playing with Purpose, her blog. And I really liked this. When she first approached me and showed me the blog, I thought it was a really cool idea and something that I definitely would have learned from. And I actually want to save this and learn how to play or how to use the toy that we're going to use with Galen. So I'm really excited to learn how to play with purpose, I guess. Yeah. So go ahead. So what do we start with? What do you recommend this with any toy? Like what? So you're going to start with Mr. Potato Head, correct?
So Mr. Potato Head is my favorite toy to play with young kids. I think, I don't know who makes the toy specifically, but I think they say it's designed for kids over the age of 2, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So, but sort of the ideas and the things that we're going to talk about today for Playing with Purpose can be used with any kind of toy. Where we'll talk a little bit about ways, what you can do if your child isn't already using words to do what I call like creating opportunities for them to communicate. So it's just little tweaks that you can make to the environment and how you set up your play scenario with your kiddo to increase language. And we can also talk a little bit about how you can use Mr. Potato Head also for comprehension, or what we call receptive language, so how much they understand to help boost that. Because if we can boost their understanding, we're going to boost the words that they use and how they express themselves as well.
Awesome. Cool.
So the first thing, this is just kind of an in general tip that I like with toys. So I try to keep all my toys that I use for therapy in their own box. And the clear plastic ones are really nice because then the child can see what's inside of it. But the fact that the toy is in a box and they probably need some help opening it is just another opportunity for them to use language with you. So maybe you teach them the sign for open, or maybe they can just make the O sound and that's their word for open, or maybe they can produce the word open on its own. So that's just one more opportunity for increasing language. And another thing that sometimes I suggest to parents in regards to the boxes or toys in general is to put either your child's favorite toy or a couple of their toys on a shelf up high where they can see it but not reach it themselves, because again, that's just going to be an opportunity for them to communicate with you and ask for the toy however they want. So,
or to climb up like Jack.
Or to climb up. Don't put a chair in front of it. Exactly. So let's say you're sitting on the floor playing with Jack with this toy. And so what I would do is give him the potato head. I'll let you hold the potato head. And probably like one of the parts. These are the orange feet. And I would take all the other parts and sort of like pour them into my lap, or hold the box in my lap. So that way he can see all of the toys, but he doesn't have he can't just reach in and grab all of them. So again, you're creating an opportunity where he has to ask you for something. He needs your help to get what he wants. If your kiddo's already at a stage where they're using words and they can name all the things, and you can just, let's say they say arm. And what I would do if the child said arm, I'd say, oh, you want the yellow arm. And so I'm using the words that they've said to me, but expanding on it so they have a model of how to use a longer phrase when they're ready to do that. Another thing that you can do with any kind of toy that has lots of parts, like Mr. Potato Head, is offer choices. So offering choices is a really great way to give kids language or give them words when they don't have it. So I might hold up, this is the lips and this is the nose. So I would say, oh, do you want the lips or the nose? And that kind of narrows the field. They don't have to sort through as many maybe words that are being stored up in their brain. And so that reduction of like opportunity kind of makes it easier for them to pick out one word. And then let's say you say nose, and I say, oh, that's great, here you go, here's the green nose. So again, they hear the word that they use, and we expand upon it. So some of the other things I like to do with Mr. Potato Head, I was talking before about comprehension and receptive language. So same thing you can do sort of like we were just doing with making choices, but you can work on identifying things this way too. So you could say, while you're playing with the toy, instead of having your child make a request, they can work on identifying something. So you can say, get the eyes, and then hopefully the child reaches for the eyes. And if I was doing that and the child maybe either reached for the wrong part or didn't reach for anything at all, I might kind of put the one item that I want them to pick out in front, so they're more likely to pick the correct thing. And then that allows you an opportunity to praise them, and then you're just going to provide a good feedback loop. So they did something, they get reinforced for doing it, they get the part, so they're playing right away. And that's just good, a good reinforcement loop for them.
Awesome. Yeah, and this seems pretty easy. You're literally just playing with your child.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is great. And this I feel like this also creates an opportunity for you to connect with your child.
Yes.
So, that's awesome. This is great.
Yeah.
So just so you guys know, I did want to interject here because you were talking about the clear plastic bin. I did check out some toys from Toyberry, because when she was talking about the toys, I was thinking, do we even have a Mr. Potato Head to use? And I know a lot of times we don't want to go out and buy this toy. Like, those of you watching are probably thinking, oh God, I have to go buy a Mr. Potato Head. You don't. We're actually going to discuss how you can do this with different toys, different toys that you already have at home. But there's also Toyberry, where you can check out toys. And Toyberry has it in a bin with a little photo all ready to go. Your child can see inside that there is a Mr. Potato Head. So you already have the setup going for you ultimately with Toyberry, which is really cool. But yeah, so I wanted to show you this. So this was a toy that I checked out with Jack a while ago. Inside it's got a bunch of vehicles, so boats, planes, trains, and to me this looks really boring, right? It's just a bunch of little, toys. And I remember checking it out and having him play. He was about 18 months, and I was shocked by what he, one, did with it, and two, what he knew. And that helped me open up an opportunity to start asking, which ones are the blue ones? Which ones are, and he was answering. It was nuts. I was so floored by that. So let's say, it's a different scenario, we have a different toy. How would you recommend playing with, let's say, something like sorting toys, or, how would you incorporate that into playing with purpose?
Yeah. So, yesterday in my blog, I wrote about vocabulary and the importance of vocabulary and kids being exposed to lots of different kinds of vocabulary. So sorting toys are really good for vocabulary, because sorting your categories is a great way to build vocabulary for kids. So with this, we can sort by color. You can sort by type of vehicle. So like Adriana said, there's trains, there's planes, there's boats, there's cars. You could sort by vehicles that go in the air versus vehicles that go on the ground versus vehicles that go in the water.
See, never would have thought of that.
Yeah. And also this is great if you're using it with little kids. So an early skill that kids are able to do sometimes before they can produce words is they can use what we call environmental sounds. So that could be like animal sounds, like the cow says moo, but that could also be like the car goes beep beep. And that beep beep sound combination is usually a pretty easy sound combination for kids. So vehicles are really great for environmental sounds as well. So you could do lots of different things. If you happen to have like plastic cups like that you already have in your kitchen for your kiddo to drink from, kids ones are often in different colors already. So you could use that as sort of a cue to help your child learn to sort by color instead of just, sometimes when we give kids like a like a blank slate or something really open-ended, that's challenging for them. But if we set up some parameters, it makes it easier. So those colors, they can see the red cup. Oh, I put all the red things in there, and then they're just matching, and that's a little bit easier for them too.
Yeah, I was really just surprised by how much, and you just gave me more to work with this. I was so surprised at what he was doing with these simple toys. It's crazy. And even yesterday, he's been playing with these for a couple days now, and he's 3.5. So we went from 18 months to 3.5, and he's still playing with these. Yeah. And I was just floored yesterday when he was talking about missing some, and he's like, I only have 3 left. So like simple math. He's like, there's 2 gone. I left them at school. There's 3 left. And I was like, you just did math, and did not know that he would have known how to do that, right? You don't make those connections. So that was really neat. So this is also something else I got at Toy Berry, just in case you guys were wondering. But I'm sure you can buy these. I feel like this would be something you could buy online or... I feel like a place like Lakeshore Learning often has a lot of stuff like that if that's nearby you, or online as well. You can find sorting toys everywhere. Or something similar that looks like that sorting toy are like colored blocks, whether it's Legos or Duplo or whatever you're playing with at your kiddo's age. Same kind of thing, you can sort by color and by size, because they're in, they kind of come in different size combinations and stuff like that. And maybe that's a toy you already have to go and get anything new. Cool. And I had a few questions for you before we continue. For those of you watching, if you guys do have any questions, feel free to ask, and we will try our best to answer them. Probably Emily will answer it. But yeah, feel free to ask any questions. And if you do miss this, or you want to share this later on, or you have to go, this will be uploaded on my Facebook page and will also be on YouTube, so you can share with your friends, with teachers, with whoever you'd like to share this with. And there'll be a blog post as well with her blog on there, or a link to her blog, and also information. But I wanted to ask you about, I guess we were sitting in a mom's group earlier this week, and there were a lot of really great questions that were brought up that I wouldn't have thought of. Because Jack is 3.5, so I'm kind of past that, stage. And these are all moms with little babies. And I know I have Galen, but once you have that first one, you know, you kind of just go with the flow of whatever's happening. But there were a few questions that came up that I want to re-ask so that we can answer them. And I know that one of the questions asked was like the expectation for words at different age points. So 1, 2, 3. Yep. And like how clear each word was, and what was the expectation for clearness at each age.
Sure. So we'll talk about number of words first. Okay. So I have something that I call my 1, 2, 3 rule. And so that means at 1-year-old or at 12 months old, we expect kids to start to develop first words. So they're going to use 1 word at a time. And usually around 1-year-old, kids will have anywhere between like 1 and 10 words, let's say. And then at 2, the jump is really big, and we expect kids to have a vocabulary of 200 to 250 words, but the 2 comes from combining 2 words. So we'll start to hear 2-word phrases. And we know from research that kids have to have a vocabulary of about 50 words before they start combining words. And then at 3, we expect kids to start using 3 or more words together in a combination. So that's the 1, 2, 3. And that also goes along with comprehension, or how much they understand, and following directions. So at 1-year-old, you should be able to tell your child a 1-part direction. So go get your cup. And they might either look at it or crawl over or walk over toward it, depending on how they're moving at that age. And so that's the 1 part. Then at 2, they should be able to follow a 2-part direction. So that could be go get your cup and take it to daddy. And then at 3, they should be able to follow a 3 or more, what we call a multi-step direction. Okay. And then to talk about how clear their speech are, sometimes you might hear a speech pathologist like myself, I might use the word intelligibility or speech clarity. So at 2 years old, we anticipate kids will be like 50% intelligible. So that's only like half the time you should understand the words that they're saying. And that's because sounds develop over a wide range of ages. And so as kids get older, there's the musculature in their mouth will get more precise, and so they'll be able to make some more complex sounds, and the sounds that they already do make are going to get clear. So at 2, we would never expect kids to have developed all the sounds that you and I use when we're talking as adults. And then at 3, we say that kids should be 80% intelligible to an unfamiliar person. So an unfamiliar person might be an aunt or uncle who you only see a few times a year, or the person who's checking you out at HEB, someone like that. And that's also still at 3 years old. We know kids shouldn't have developed all the sounds that we produce as adults, but still 80% of the time you should be able to understand what they're saying.
All right. And I know this question came up too in the group, like, how do you know if you should look into, checking if there is a speech delay, or just to be sure, because I know for parents, if we're at home with our children, there isn't anyone to tell us, hey, because we understand them. I mean, gibberish at 1 year, 15 months, you understand it like a pro. Everyone else doesn't, So how do you know, like, what do you feel would be the best way to go about maybe trying to figure out if your child does need help or...
Yeah. So on my website and lots of other places online, you can find developmental milestone checklists. So the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, has a really good comprehensive one. I have a little more streamlined one that I have on my website that you can sign up and just email it to you right away as soon as you sign up for it. If you go to the homepage, there's a button at the bottom, click it, put in your email address, you'll get emailed it, within a few seconds. Yeah. And you can slap it on your fridge and check things. It's designed to be like have check boxes, so you can just kind of check things off as your child is gaining new skills. Okay. And I think often if your child is going to school, preschool teachers usually have a pretty good handle on things. Sometimes pediatricians have checklists that you might have to ask for. It might not be something they readily provide to you, but if you ask for it, your pediatrician should have a resource that they can provide to you as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I would not have known that everything you just said, I would not have known to look at any of that. And then what's your take on bilingual, like teaching your child bilingual, if you are in a bilingual home, teaching them both languages, do you feel that causes a delay? Do you feel, what's your take on that?
Yeah, so as a speech pathologist, we know from research that raising children bilingual isn't going to hinder their language development at all. Kind of what the research says is if the child is delayed, they're going to likely be delayed across the board. So you kind of have to tease out, the two, let's say you're raising your child with English and Spanish. And so the languages should sort of develop pretty evenly. And at one period in time, maybe their Spanish skills excel a little bit, and then the English catches up, and then their English skills excel a little bit more, and the Spanish catches up. But it should be pretty even across the board. And typically kids who are delayed are going to be delayed in both languages across the board. So if your child's stronger in one language, that's not because they necessarily have a speech delay, and the other maybe they haven't been exposed to it quite as much as the other.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting to know. Because I think for Jack, he's exposed to English a lot more than Spanish. But he wants to speak Spanish and pick up Spanish words because my mom is, fluent Spanish speaker. So it's really funny, seeing him try and process both and trying to remember both. And so it's really neat watching that.
There's a great organization in Austin called Think Bilingual. And they have lots of resources on their website. I'm pretty sure they offer classes. And they offer, I think they have some books and things like that if you that you can use to read to your child if you are raising your child bilingual, and they're a really good resource.
Awesome. And I'll add a link to them since you just told me, so that way you guys can have direct access to that. What's your take on pacifiers and cups, sippy cups?
Yeah. So, speaking as a speech language pathologist, not as a parent, my rule is no pacifiers after a year.
Okay.
And we say that for a couple of different reasons. The biggest reason is oral motor, or the development of the things in your mouth. And so what happens when babies are breastfeeding or feeding from a bottle, they use what we call a suckling pattern, not a sucking pattern. Slight difference in that word. So the pattern that babies use is their tongue comes forward to suck out of the nipple. And as babies develop and they grow and they're more mature, we swallow with a tongue backward motion. So that's the kind of swallowing pattern we use as adults or even young children. So using a pacifier can promote that early suckling pattern with the tongue forward.
Yeah.
And also you can read things from dental organizations. You can find lots of photos of kids who have developed a really narrow jaw and palate from that sucking as well. So we want kids to develop good, strong musculature in their mouth so they can eat and swallow and speak well. And so the pacifier can sometimes inhibit that a little bit. Another thing, because we were talking about kids starting to talk at a year-old, most likely if your child has a pacifier in their mouth, they can't talk.
Yeah.
So that's just going to give them more opportunity for that verbal communication as well. And it's important for kids to learn how to self-soothe and
I totally
all those
agree.
things as well.
Of course, I'm over here trying to like do the motion with my tongue. Like, okay, how do we do this?
Yep.
So, okay, that's, and I feel like that's fair. And I feel like the pediatrician usually recommends after one.
I think that's like a pretty consistent pediatrician, speech pathologist, dentist. I think we're all on board with that.
Yes, definitely. Another thing that we discussed, or that I had questions about, I do know that ear infections can possibly cause delays, correctly? Okay, so I think, how would you know, I guess you would know it if your child has consistent ear infections and they're not, picking up on words. You probably right there you would realize something's up. And it's the ear infections. Do you know how quickly the recovery time is afterwards for them to pick up words?
I don't know that. That's a good question, and I don't have the answer to that. So what happens when kids have ear infection is there's fluid in their ear, and so I've heard doctors describe it as it's almost like you're trying to hear things underwater. So you can imagine all that that auditory information you're trying to take in is muffled.
Yeah.
And we hear sounds at different volumes, so some are loud, some are quiet. So often you're going to miss out on hearing some of those quieter sounds. And we know kids have to hear and understand language to be able to use it expressly, to be able to use those words. So if they're missing out on a lot of that information, it's not uncommon for them to either be delayed starting to talk or have some trouble with some of their specific speech sounds as they get older.
Yeah. I will say, I guess this would be a personal experience story, but we do have a friend that had just constant ear infections before age 1, a little friend, and Jack is pretty verbal, so there was this huge difference after he got the ear, like they're on par with each other, like they're both right where.
I've heard stories of kids like getting tubes and like starting to talk the next day.
Yeah.
I don't think that always happens, but I've heard stories.
Yeah, I was so, like, I mean, it just, with the difference of a couple weeks, we didn't see him for a few weeks, and we saw him again, and he was just caught up. Like, he really just needed that clarity to hear. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that's not across the board every child, but I thought that was really neat. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about was, or that we had discussed, was stuttering. And when is that no longer, normal? When is that something you should look into?
So with a lot of things with development, there's stuff that's going to be typical and appropriate for kids until a certain age, and then it usually goes away on its own. And then if it doesn't, then maybe we would suggest you get some intervention or talk to somebody else about it. So with stuttering, or what we sometimes call fluency, it's really common for kids to be disfluent or have bumps in their speech or repeat words up until they're 4, 4.5, 5 years old. And that's just part of the process of acquiring language. And sometimes when kids have explosions and develop a lot of words at once, they might have trouble. I sometimes explain it like, think about your brain as a big filing cabinet, and you have to sort through all of those folders to access the words. And when you have this big dump of new words coming in, it's harder to access the ones that you want. And so that might be why we hear kids stuttering. But up until 4 and 5, it's still considered pretty typically developing. There are some other things that we would look for, and if you had concerns as a speech therapist, there are things that I might look at that might say to me, oh, this might need, your child might need a little bit of help with it. But oftentimes it's really typical.
And what would we do so Jack this summer would do I don't know, it's not exactly stuttering, it's like the stall, like repeating 3 words over and over and over until he would remember what the other half of what he was saying would come in. And I think for me, this probably isn't the best reaction, but I'd get impatient because I'm like, you're saying the same 3 words like 9 times, So I'd be like, I'd want to finish it for him.
Right.
So so that's probably wrong, right?
It's not the best choice.
Yeah.
So I would definitely recommend with kids to not interrupt or not finish the sentence for them. Try and stay calm and relaxed, because sometimes if your anxiety goes up, your child might feed off of that, and their anxiety might go up, and that could sort of perpetuate or increase the behavior a little bit more. So kind of wait it out, try and stay calm and relaxed, let him or her finish their sentence. Sometimes what I suggest to parents is like model it back to him, like really smoothly and slowly, so that he hears sort of like a good model of those words that he was using. And I think also if you're starting to see an increase in that repetitious behavior with words. You can sort of, in general, provide a good model and try and slow down your own speech, talk a little more slowly and deliberately, so that they hear that good model of easy, smooth speech.
Okay, yeah, I'll have to remember that. It was a very short period of time where he was doing that. And I was, of course, like, what is going on? But you're right. I think that also happens with, like, an explosion of language. All these little things kind of coincide. Because he did, and he pointed it out, which I thought was really interesting. But apparently we say actually a lot in our household. And he would precurse things by saying actually. You know, and then one day he came home from school and said, Mom, when I was a little kid, I used to say actually, and now I say actually. And it was just really funny because I was like, he recognized that. And
awareness is cool.
Yeah, it was really interesting. And it kind of, all of that fell into place where the stuttering kind of stopped after that too. And I'm not saying obviously it was that one word, but it was like a lot of little things clicked. Yeah. And it, you know, we went from there, we went forward. So, but that's really interesting. It's good to know that there is kind of an end game to the stuttering and how to react if it does happen. Yep. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, we still have a few more minutes. I'm trying to think if there was anything else that we wanted to discuss. Is there anything? Oh, the sign language. Yep. Do you feel that stalls, I guess, learning, language and learning?
I think a lot of times sign language can be really great for kids as an intermediary stage between not having verbal language and developing verbal language. So I think one of the reasons that baby sign came to be is because it's often easier for kids to do what we call like bigger gross motor movements. So like this is the sign for eat, and that's a bigger movement that you're doing with a bigger part of your body versus all the little movements that we make for speech in our mouth, because it's all these little teeny tiny things that happen in really rapid succession. And so those bigger movements are going to be easier for kids developmentally, and as their skills become refined and they can do those smaller movements, speech will become easier. So verbal communication is going to be the most functional form of communication for the child. If you teach them sign, what often happens is that kids will just stop using the signs on their own. They'll just kind of naturally fade away as that verbal language becomes more functional for them.
And I think, that's definitely what happened with us. We didn't learn that many sign language words. We learned very few, but those definitely trickled. And it was the main, the most important, like more, eat, milk, by 2 they were gone, but he knew the words. So. Yeah. And then you and I had previously talked about this, and I can't remember where the conversation went, but I was very curious about little ones in that transition of going, when they want to be carried, I carry you. Like that was Jack's thing, I carry you, and I knew that meant, carry me. But I'm wondering, what is that? Is that he hears us say, do you want me to carry you?
Yeah, I think that's some of it. So that's kind of, he's having a little bit of difficulty with pronouns, and that's really common. Kids will start to refer to themselves by name because they hear you call him Jack, so he starts to refer to himself as Jack a lot. And it's just like, that's totally typical for kids to do, and just as their skills and they learn to differentiate between those different types of like first person and third person, he'll just revert and be able to use, more appropriate, that's like a grammatical thing, so appropriate grammar. And so I would just model it back for him how he would say it. Okay. So if he said, I carry you, say, oh, carry me, mommy. Okay. And then you provide him with like a model of words that he could say. Okay. So, or carry me, daddy, whatever it is.
Yeah, I always wondered if that would confuse him more, but no, that's good to know. So if this next one does that, I will do that. Yeah. Because I'll say, yes, I'll carry you.
I think with just like anything, I think we talked about this a little bit the other day when we were talking about clarity and how much kids' speech is intelligible. Like a really common substitution that kids will use is they'll say deuce for juice, because that hard J sound is complicated. So when a kiddo says deuce and they're looking at their cup, I would say, oh, you want your juice. So just in general, it's good to model back for kids. Okay. We sometimes, like the fancy word we call that is recasting. So you're just modeling back for them like a more appropriate version of what they've said, just so they get that auditory information, and that helps them learn.
Yeah, okay. We're probably the worst parents, because there are some words that Jack says that are so cute, and we're like, should we correct this? Yeah. Because, and a foon is one of them. Yeah. I don't know why. I love that he's like, I need a foon, because everything is so clear when he speaks. except for that.
Yep.
And so we're just like, oh, you're almost at that stage where all the baby words are gone. Right. But we'll be better, and we will start saying spoon.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty much it, unless there's anything else you want to add.
I think that was great.
Yeah, I think this was a lot of fun. I'm really excited that I got to play with Mr. Potato Head for a minute. And then just a reminder, you can check out toys at Toyberry that will help with what Emily does and her blog. And Liza's great. She's the owner of Toyberry, and she'll help guide you. She's actually the one that recommended these little category toys. I don't know what that would be called, whatever this type of toy is, but sorting toys. Sorting toys. Yep. She's the one that recommended it, and she sent me home with it, and I did not think that it was going to be a productive toy to bring home, and it was amazing. And for those of you that are book readers like me, I highly recommend Time to Talk. This book is what you need to know about your child's speech and language development. A lot of what Emily talks about is covered in here, and it's also a good source just to have at home if you want to go back and reference. I love to do that. That's one of my favorite things. That's why I have so many of the parenting books. I like to go back and reference them. So this is a good book to have, and I'll put a few of the things that I read in here, a few of the pointers in the blog once I get that out, and I'll probably have that out by next week. Other than that, I'm not going to have another guest until September 8th, and that's actually going to be Courtney, who I missed because I had some pretty severe food poisoning. But she'll be back, and she'll be able to guide us through helping your teens kind of diffuse that stress and anxiety with going back to school. And we'll also kind of talk about touching base with yourself and just bringing yourself to a moment of peace, because I know for me personally that's been a struggle lately. So just good stuff coming up. And I think that's all for us. Yeah. You guys have a wonderful weekend. Oh, and stay dry with that hurricane.
Yeah.